North Atlantic, early 1942, somewhere west of Ireland. The sea is calm enough that night. A low swell rolls beneath the dark hull of U-552, barely visible against the black water. On the bridge, Captain Lieutenant Eric Top stands without urgency, one hand resting on the rail, his eyes adjusted to the darkness. There is no sense of danger here. Not now. Not at night. For German U-boat crews, darkness is not something to fear. It is protection. It is speed. It is invisibility. The submarine moves on the surface, diesel engines humming steadily, faster than it could ever travel underwater. Below deck, batteries recharge. Crewmen smoke quietly, their voices low but relaxed. This is routine. This is how the war at sea is fought. British and American escorts may guard their convoys during the day, but once the sun disappears, the balance shifts. Surface ships cannot see far. Aircraft rarely patrol this far from land, and even when they do, the night hides everything. German naval doctrine is clear. The ocean after dark belongs to the U-boats. For nearly 2 years, this belief has been reinforced by results. Tankers burn in the Atlantic, convoys scatter, torpedoes strike without warning, and by the time escort vessels react, the submarine is already gone, slipping beneath the surface, swallowed by the black water. Night attacks have become standard practice. Submarines stalk convoys from the surface, silhouetted against the faint glow of the horizon, firing torpedoes at point-blank range. It is faster, more accurate, safer, and most importantly, it works. On this night, there is nothing to suggest that anything has changed. No alarms, no radar contacts, no sudden course corrections. The bridge crew scans the horizon with binoculars, searching for the faint shapes of merchant ships or the telltale smoke of a convoy. The ocean feels empty, quiet, controlled. What the men aboard U-552 do not know, what no German submarine commander yet understands, is that the night itself is about to become hostile. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, Allied engineers and air crews have begun to solve a problem that has haunted them since the first months of the war. A problem that German commanders believe is unsolvable. How do you kill something you cannot see? The answer is already airborne, but on this night, the U-boat crew remains unaware, confident, exposed, still operating under rules that no longer apply. They stand on the surface of the Atlantic, believing they are invisible, unaware that the darkness they trust is about to betray them.
The confidence of German U-boat commanders did not come from arrogance. It came from experience. By the early years of the war, submarine crews had learned the rhythms of the Atlantic. They understood what the enemy could do, and, more importantly, what the enemy could not. During daylight, a surfaced U-boat was vulnerable. Aircraft could spot the dark shape of a submarine against the water. Lookouts had seconds to react before bombs or machine gun fire tore into the deck. Diving under pressure was dangerous, chaotic, and sometimes fatal. But night changed everything. Once darkness fell, visibility collapsed. Escort ships relied on primitive sonar that was unreliable at speed. Radar existed, but its range was limited and its accuracy poor. A small submarine on the surface, moving quietly through heavy seas, was nearly impossible to detect. Aircraft posed little threat. Long-range patrol planes were rare, their coverage incomplete. Even when they were present, finding a submarine in total darkness was close to impossible. Pilots could hear engines below them, but they could not see the target. This reality shaped German doctrine. U-boats were encouraged to remain on the surface at night. Diesel engines provided speed and endurance. Batteries could recharge safely. Commanders could see farther with binoculars than any Allied sensor could detect them. Most importantly, attacking from the surface allowed precision. Rather than firing blind from deep underwater, U-boats approached convoys directly. They slipped between columns of merchant ships, lining up torpedo shots at close range. In many cases, they fired from less than 1,000 meters. The escorts often had no warning. By the time the first explosion lit the horizon, the submarine was already turning away, preparing to dive. Confusion spread across the convoy. Searchlights swept empty water. Depth charges fell where the U-boat had been minutes earlier. For the men inside the submarine, this pattern became routine. Night was not chaos, it was order. Every successful patrol reinforced the belief that the ocean after dark belonged to them. Losses occurred, but they were accepted as the cost of war, not as a sign of vulnerability. There was no reason to believe this balance would change. The night had protected them before. It would protect them again. Or so they believed. For the Allies, the war at sea was not a contest of skill. It was a struggle against something they could not see. Convoy escorts knew the signs. A sudden explosion. A ship slowing, listing, burning. A column of smoke rising into the night sky. By the time the alarm sounded, the attack was already over. Somewhere beneath the surface, the submarine was gone. Destroyer captains ordered hard turns and full speed. Sonar operators strained to find a contact, headphones pressed tight against their ears. But the ocean was vast, and the echoes were unreliable. A thermal layer, a change in depth, a moment of noise, and the target vanished. Depth charges were dropped on suspicion rather than certainty. Most missed. The real frustration came from the air. Allied aircraft could patrol thousands of square miles, but only in theory. During daylight, a submarine could be spotted from miles away, its dark hull visible even in rough seas. But at night, that advantage disappeared. Pilots reported engine sounds below them. Occasionally, they saw a faint wake, a shadow, a ripple on the water. But without visual confirmation, there was nothing they could do. Bombing blind was pointless. Firing without a target was wasteful. The enemy was there. Everyone knew it. But knowing was not enough. Radar offered hope, but early systems were crude. Contacts flickered and disappeared. Operators could not always tell the difference between a submarine, a wave, or a distant ship. Even when radar detected something, pilots faced a cruel problem. As they descended to attack, the contact vanished. At low altitude, radar lost the target in sea clutter. The ocean swallowed the signal. In the final seconds, when accuracy mattered most, the submarine became invisible again. It was as if the enemy dissolved into the water. Commanders read reports filled with the same language: possible contact, suspected submarine, attack inconclusive. Meanwhile, the losses continued. Tankers burned in the Atlantic. Supplies meant for Britain and the Soviet Union sank into the dark. Crews watched helplessly as ships disappeared within sight of their escorts. The Allies were not losing because they lacked courage or numbers. They were losing
because they lacked sight. Until the submarine could be found and attacked in the final moments when it was most exposed, the night would continue to belong to the U-boats. And for a long time, no one knew how to change that.
The solution did not come from a grand strategy meeting or a new fleet of ships. It came from a simple, uncomfortable question. What if the problem was not finding the submarine, but seeing it at the wrong moment? Allied engineers already had radar. Aircraft could detect U-boats on the surface from miles away. But radar alone was not enough. Every attack followed the same pattern. A contact appeared on the screen. The aircraft turned toward it, and as the pilot descended for the final run, the signal vanished. The submarine was still there, but now invisible. Radar could guide an aircraft close. It could not guide the weapons. Someone noticed the pattern. The moment radar failed was always the same. Low altitude, final approach, seconds before the attack. That was when the submarine was most exposed and when the attacker was suddenly blind. The idea that followed sounded almost ridiculous. What if, instead of trying to see the submarine from far away, they simply lit it up? Not with flares, not with searchlights sweeping the ocean. Those had been tried before. They gave too much warning. Submarines dove before the attack could begin. This would have to be different. The light would stay off until the very last moment, until the aircraft was already committed, until it was too late to escape. The concept was brutally simple. Use radar to guide the aircraft in darkness. Then, seconds before release, flood the ocean with light. The submarine would have no time to react. Many believed it would never work. Pilots worried the light would reveal them instead. Engineers feared the equipment would be too heavy, too fragile, too slow to deploy. Commanders doubted crews could coordinate radar, altitude, speed, and timing with enough precision. But the losses left little room for doubt. The Atlantic was being bled dry. Convoys were still dying at night, and nothing else had worked. So the idea moved forward. A powerful carbon arc searchlight was mounted beneath patrol aircraft. It was fixed forward, not sweeping. Its purpose was not to search, but to expose. It would be called the Lee light. And once it was tested, the rules of the night would never be the same. Turning the idea into reality proved far more difficult than anyone expected. Mounting the Lee light beneath an aircraft was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in using it under combat conditions, at night, over the ocean, at high speed, with no room for mistakes. Crews had to learn an entirely new way of fighting. Radar operators tracked faint blips on flickering screens, guiding pilots through darkness with calm, measured instructions. Navigators calculated approach angles while compensating for wind, cloud cover, and sea state. Pilots descended low over black water, trusting instruments they barely understood. Timing was everything. If the light was switched on too early, the submarine would dive and escape. Too late, and the aircraft would overshoot the target or strike the water. Training flights were unforgiving. Some crews activated the light too high, blinding themselves in reflected glare. Others misjudged distance and altitude, passing directly over empty sea where the contact had been seconds earlier. A few aircraft crashed outright.
victims of disorientation and fatigue. There were no manuals for this kind of warfare. Every patrol refined the process. Crews learned to stay silent until the final run. Radar operators counted down distances. Pilots memorized the moment when darkness would abruptly turn to daylight. Below them, the ocean waited. Despite the risks, something became clear very quickly. When the light worked, it worked completely. Submarines caught in the beam appeared frozen. Bridge crews hesitated, unsure whether to dive or fight. Seconds passed. Seconds they did not have. Reports from training and early patrols began to change tone. What had once been described as experimental was now called promising. What had been doubtful was now effective. Aircraft were no longer just patrol platforms. They were becoming hunters. But the true test had yet to come. Soon, a U-boat would experience the lee light not as an experiment, but as a sudden, blinding reality.
The Atlantic looks the same as it always has. Dark, empty, silent. On the surface, a German U-boat cuts through the water at cruising speed. Diesel engines run smoothly. The bridge crew scans the horizon, eyes adjusted to the night. There is no reason to dive, no reason to hurry. Above them, unseen, an aircraft closes in. Inside the cockpit, the world is reduced to instruments and whispers. The radar operator watches a single contact on the screen, steady and clear. Distance closing, course unchanged. The submarine has no warning. No searchlights sweep the sky. No engines roar overhead. Nothing breaks the darkness. The pilot lowers the aircraft, descending toward the black surface of the ocean. Altitude drops. Speed increases. The final approach begins. At 200 meters, the radar contact disappears. This is the moment that always failed before. The ocean swallows the signal. The submarine vanishes from the screen. For a split second, there is nothing but darkness below. Then the switch is thrown. The night explodes into light. A blinding white beam slams into the ocean, locking onto the submarine with brutal clarity. The U-boat is suddenly exposed, its deck, its tower, its men frozen in stark illumination. For the crew on the bridge, the effect is paralyzing. 1 second they are invisible. The next they are standing on a stage. Orders are shouted. Hands move for the hatch. Engines strain as the submarine tries to turn, to dive, to escape. There is no time. Depth charges fall almost immediately, detonating beside the hull. Columns of water rise into the light. The shock waves tear through steel. Instruments shatter. The boat lurches violently. Inside the submarine, chaos erupts. Lights go out. Men are thrown from their feet. The pressure of the sea forces itself inward. Somewhere below, compartments flood. The aircraft roars overhead, already climbing away. In less than a minute, the encounter is over. Whether the submarine sinks or escapes, something irreversible has happened. The night has betrayed them. For the first time, a U-boat has been hunted on the surface after dark and found. The rules of the Atlantic have changed. Survivors will later say the ocean felt different after that night. The darkness was still there. The waves still moved the same way. But the silence was gone. Across the Atlantic, U-boat commanders begin receiving reports that make no sense. Submarines attacked at night, on the surface, with no warning, no flares, no time to dive. At first, many refused to believe it. Night has always been their shield. U-boats are designed to fight on the surface after dark. Batteries recharge faster. Speed is higher. Crews can breathe fresh air. Lookouts can see farther than any aircraft. Now, that advantage is gone. On patrol, commanders hesitate before ordering the boat to surface. They scan the sky longer. They argue with their officers. Minutes are lost. And minutes matter. Some boats stay submerged too long, draining batteries, slowing their patrols. Others surface anyway and pay the price. The psychological impact spreads faster than the losses themselves. Crews begin sleeping in their clothes. Lookouts flinch at reflections on the waves. Every distant engine sound feels like an approaching aircraft. When a searchlight suddenly pierces the darkness, panic erupts. Men scramble for hatches. Orders overlap. Valves are opened too late. Boats dive at unsafe angles, crashing downward as alarms scream through the hull. Some never recover. Commanders who once hunted confidently now feel hunted themselves. German naval doctrine starts to crack. Reports reach headquarters describing crews unnerved, exhausted, mentally strained. Boats return early. Patrols are cut short. Success rates fall. The ocean is still vast, but it no longer feels empty. For the Allies, the change is immediate and measurable. Convoys face fewer night attacks. Shipping losses begin to drop. Aircraft crews notice submarines diving earlier, running slower, making mistakes. The hunter has become the hunted. And deep inside the German command structure, an uncomfortable truth begins to form. The U-boat war is no longer being fought on their terms. German Naval Command does not remain passive. Within weeks, reports from the Atlantic pile up on desks in Berlin and Lorient. Night attacks, sudden illumination, boats lost without warning. The pattern is impossible to ignore. Orders are issued. New tactics are demanded. U-boat commanders are instructed to reduce surface time, to dive at the slightest suspicion, to post extra lookouts, to open fire on aircraft instead of diving immediately. It sounds decisive on paper. At sea, it is chaos. Submarines are not designed to fight aircraft. Their anti-aircraft guns are exposed. Crews must remain topside under fire. And at night, judging distance and speed is nearly impossible. Some commanders try. When a searchlight flashes on, guns open fire blindly into the darkness. Tracers arc upward. The aircraft keeps coming. Seconds later, bombs fall. Other boats attempt constant submerged operations. They move slowly. Batteries drain faster than expected. Patrol zones shrink. Opportunities vanish. A weapon meant to terrorize shipping is now hiding from the sky. New equipment is rushed into service. Radar warning receivers, improved flak platforms, tactical instructions rewritten again and again. None of it restores what has been lost. The core problem remains unchanged. The aircraft can see the submarine first. Every adaptation costs something: speed, endurance, crew morale. Veteran commanders complain privately that their boats feel blind, that the night, once their greatest ally, has turned hostile. Younger crews feel it more sharply. They have no memory of easy patrols, no victories to balance the fear. Only long hours underwater, listening for propellers that may already be overhead. Meanwhile, Allied crews grow more confident. Patrols tighten. Coverage expands. Attacks become routine rather than experimental. The lee light is no longer a surprise. It is an expectation. The balance has shifted. And for the first time since the war began, German planners are forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. There may be no counter. By mid-1943, the numbers can no longer be argued away. Loss reports arrive faster than replacements. Patrol areas grow quieter, not because the ocean is safer, but because fewer boats are returning to sea. The Atlantic has changed signs. Convoys that once lost ships every night now pass through danger zones with minimal contact. Escort commanders report fewer sonar contacts, fewer torpedo winks, fewer emergency maneuvers. The absence is telling. U-boat headquarters studies the data in disbelief. The tonnage sunk per patrol drops sharply. Boats that survive return empty-handed, crews exhausted, nerves frayed. The strategy that once brought Britain to the brink is failing. The night surface attack, long the backbone of U-boat tactics, is no longer viable. Aircraft patrols overlap. Radar coverage closes gaps. Darkness offers no protection. Every surfaced submarine is a target. Every patrol is a gamble with shrinking odds. Admiral Dunitz refuses to surrender the campaign, but even he recognizes the shift. Orders become defensive, cautious. Boats are instructed to avoid aircraft rather than engage shipping. This is not what they were built for. The U-boat fleet, once an offensive weapon, is slowly being reduced to survival. Meanwhile, Allied confidence grows into dominance. Aircraft range extends farther into the Atlantic. New bases close remaining gaps. Patrols become relentless. Crews expect contact and usually find it. The lee light is no longer a secret weapon. It is part of a system. Radar, searchlights, depth charges, coordination. A machine designed to find and destroy submarines. German sailors began referring to the ocean as lit, even on moonless nights. A dark joke masking real fear. Veterans who once hunted freely now feel exposed everywhere. And beneath the surface, the realization spreads. This war cannot be won, not with courage, not with experience, not with adaptation. The environment itself has turned hostile. There is no single moment when the U-boat war officially ends. No announcement, no surrender of the ocean. It simply becomes unwinnable. After that night, when darkness betrayed them, nothing is ever the same. Submarines still sail, crews still fight, ships still sink, but the certainty is gone. The ocean is no longer a place of concealment. It is a battlefield that sees everything. German commanders understand this before politicians do.
Reports speak less of victory and more of survival. Boats are sent out knowing they may never return. Crews are younger. Training is shorter. Experience is irreplaceable and vanishing. For the Allies, the transformation is profound. What was once a defensive struggle becomes control. Supplies flow. Armies move. Invasions become possible. The Atlantic, once a deadly barrier, becomes a bridge. The lee light itself will eventually be replaced by better sensors, more advanced radar, and integrated systems. But its importance remains unchanged. It marks the moment when technology stripped the enemy of invisibility, when the night stopped belonging to the hunter. In post-war analyses, historians will point to many turning points: code breaking, long-range aircraft, escort carriers. All are true, but none are as sudden, none are as psychologically devastating. Because the lee light did not just destroy submarines, it destroyed confidence. German sailors will later write that the ocean never felt dark again, that even in total blackness they felt exposed. A war once fought in shadows had been dragged into the light, and once that happened, there was no way back. The night the German U-boats realized the ocean was no longer safe was not defined by explosions or heroics. It was defined by a switch being flipped, and an entire war changing direction in seconds.